thank you for the panelists for being with me and with us today. We have 4 people. 3 are colleagues from the ySKILLS project. So Cristina, Ponte, whom you already saw, Jacek Pyzalski from the Adam ySKILLS University in Poland, Veronika, Kalmus from Artur University in Estonia. But we also have a guest coming from the field, someone who has a lot of experience working with schools and with practitioners, and that's Andy the Meulenaere. He is a coordinator of the Mediawijs, and Mediawijs is the knowledge center of media literacy and in Flanders. So the idea today is that we recap the main ideas, the main concepts that we've been discussing today, but that we mainly look at how can we actually engage with our stakeholders, and in particular with stakeholders in education. As you saw today in the morning, we put a lot of pressure, and we have lots of hopes in educational systems, in educational stakeholders, whether informal education, but we really hope that children are gonna get the necessary digital skills by learning, by being taught, and hopefully in an evidence-based way. But that's easier said than done. We know that there are many efforts worldwide to improve media literacy, digital skills, but we know very little about if these initiatives actually work. There are many programs and many awareness-raising initiatives, but also curriculum in different countries, but we don't have much knowledge about the impact of these initiatives. But what we do know is that evidence can help make these initiatives more powerful. We do rely and we do feel that the knowledge that we've gathered in projects such as this one and many other projects that have to do with this that could actually help build better educational materials and increase the educational offer. So that's the idea today, that we're going to be discussing how can actually make our knowledge more accessible and more useful for educational stakeholders, knowing that when we talk to teachers, the first thing that they tell us when we present them with research is, we don't have time for this. This is really disconnected from our everyday practices. There's no way I'm going to read an academic article and then implement something in the classroom because it has nothing to do with what I'm teaching. So we are starting with that idea in mind, that the reality of the classroom is very different to the reality of the research. However, we want to build a bridge and make that knowledge come closer, but that requires more than translation. And we said, okay, we can develop nice materials, but that doesn't necessarily help us to be impactful and to make that educational offer better. So I would like to start with the first question for Andy, because you're our guest and you're not from the project. And my question to you is, what do you think is actually needed to make academic knowledge more accessible and more useful for educational stakeholders, and in particular for more effective interventions at school, for instance?
It's not the easiest of questions. But I'll give it a try. What we've seen here is very interesting, and I do applaud the project for producing all these lovely materials, for the participatory project process with the children and with teachers, and it's great that you've been doing this and that it was included in a research project, which is often not the case. If we start there, you'd need to think of this from the start. And even when Bika says, after 3 years, we were kind of thinking, let's start thinking about this. Yeah, I'd be a bit critical of that. But so you do need the transfer, and But what I miss maybe a bit in the transfer is often miss is, okay, if we want to, a lot of research projects want to disseminate the knowledge that they've gained, the information. They think what teachers and young people need is information. What we see more and more is that, well, information is part of the thing, but what we really need to know is what do we want to change. I've always been a big fan of what Professor Helsper, her DISTO project, what are the outcomes? Well, that part of outcomes is more than just disseminating information of a research project. And teachers do need to know what the information that you are providing means in their context, what they can do with it, and what they can change, and how it fits into their program. And I think the other thing is, this is a very project-oriented way of working, which is, as I said, great. But it's also a lot of teachers, like if I look at reality in classrooms in Flanders, a lot of them use methods that are produced by educational publishers. If you can't fit these lessons within that method, then they're just somewhere, floating around somewhere. And then we come maybe to next to educational publishers, you do have intermediary organizations like us, and you have them on all sorts of subjects. You have them in all sorts of fields. We're specifically for media literacy, but if you look in our colleagues or at our organization that are a bit on the same level, you have organizations focusing on sexual and sexual relationships and other relationships. You have organizations working on bullying. You have all these kinds of organizations. And they're providing alternatives to what the educational publishers are already providing. Sometimes they work together, sometimes they work apart. But the thing there is that, first of all, they are working towards a specific target group, so maybe Flemish teachers. Second of all, they know the context in which these teachers work. Third of all, they try to adapt everything they have and connect it to the curriculum or the program that the teachers will be using. And fourth of all, they are building a community. We put a lot of effort in organizing training and building ambassadorships within schools through media coach training, and then building a community that knows your brand and that knows what you are delivering. And still, then it's a big challenge to get people to actually use what you're delivering, because we're often providing things that are more transversal, and they have to fit it into a subject. So I think taking all these things into account, a lot of what you need to do is, in each of these countries that you do the project in, you need to have the right partners that already have the community and the brand and can help you get it to where you need.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. And yeah, definitely. I think outreaching is a part where we are still learning a lot. I mean, how to get to the communities we need to work with, and definitely identify the right partners. So in our project, we have some good examples of researchers who have been really trying to reach out to schools and to work with schools in the field. So I would like to ask, especially Cristina and Jacek, about, in your experience, what have been for you the main challenges of trying to bring, now we're going to look at the other way around, the academic knowledge to schools, and what are the main challenges that you face, and do you have any examples of how to overcome those challenges for the academic audience here?
Yeah, so I would be very brief. I've got the privilege to work in both worlds for 2 decades, so one leg in academia, one leg in, let's say, designing and implementing practical media education and some other education programs. But I must say that there is a big map of things that could be mentioned here, but I would mention a few, just a few. One thing is the language we use, because we have to remember that what the teachers know about what the young people do on the internet, what are the needs for media literacy, we are not the only source. They watch the media, they watch the popular film that just share the popular beliefs, and they are sometimes in contrast with what we bring. So, for example, they know that young people know everything about the internet and they've got high skills, and then we come and we say, no, it's not exactly the true situation, yes? And this is the discomfort, and this can be communicated to the teachers in a way that from the very beginning causes some kind of reluctance, you know, saying like, hey, what do you bring? We know how it is, it's different, like this. So it's even how we communicate the research. If we are saying like, you don't know, yes, and we simply make this kind of even conflict sometimes at the very beginning. So the language we use, if it's really that the teachers and the schools feel that those researchers are rather to do something together, not to just prove that you are wrong, something like this, because it's very easy to build this kind of situation. That's one thing. Another thing that it's sometimes researchers, because okay, it depends who you ask. If you ask the teachers who is to blame, they would say researchers, yes? When you ask the researchers would say the teachers, the schools, they don't want to use our hard work outcomes, you know, something like this. But it's always like this when you point at someone, all three other fingers point at you, yes? So it's always like both are to blame. And for example, what we do sometimes as the researchers, it's many scientific papers or let's say popular papers wrote by the researchers is something like, oh, there's low level of, for example, information skills, and schools should do measures to make it higher, yes? What could you do with such kind of general recommendation, yes? What actually that means, yes? And they know that it's not simply they talk to children to do. And what we lack sometimes as researchers, that we don't go that into detail, that we really talk about important things. So we cannot translate, let's say, research reality or study reality into practical things. So to the end, one small example. When I meet young people, like 8th grade, and I say, hey, do you use Wikipedia? Everybody uses, yes? And then you ask, so I've got some questions, yes? Who actually creates the content in Wikipedia? Nobody knows. So actually, we could talk to the teachers about information skills. The teacher could be also, let's say, claiming, okay, it's important thing, this information skills, but if we do not translate this into, let's say, practical details that are really happening, so for example, the source they use on everyday basis, we will always talk different languages, so it will be like abstract discussion that these are important things somewhere, but we don't land in the class, we are on the cloud, somewhere like this. So I could give much more examples of this kind, but for me, these 2 points are really vital for this kind of cooperation.
Yes, I agree that language is a key issue. And I think this is a long journey. For years and decades, school was the place where an older generation teachers taught children that were seen as ignorant. This is the institutional vision of the school. Researchers lived in ivory towers, producing knowledge, and we are not in this time anymore. And we had, in these research projects in which I've been participating with several colleagues, we have the opportunity to work with an issue that belongs to this time and challenges the role of the researchers. As Bika said, the public science dissemination is a role of the researchers, and the role of the teachers, that some teachers, not all, and we cannot ignore that the school is a conservative institution, but teachers are seeing that they are not the owners of the knowledge, that peer-to-peer training and peer-to-peer communication is important, is something that they share a culture that they don't share. So this is a point that I believe that proximity between researchers and those that are in the field is needed. Proximity in terms of communication, in terms of language, in terms of making these results available. It's interesting because we had this experience when we ask people to anticipate the results of the survey, of the ySKILLS survey. Teachers tend to say, oh, the best knowledge they have is information and navigation because it's part of the curriculum. And when they realize that it's at the bottom, they say, oh, we have to rethink why. So this is something that creates a proximity. And other point that I would like to stress is teachers, now the digital is part of the curriculum, but for teachers, and this is also a long journey, teachers associated to digital with instrumental learning for different areas of the curriculum. They don't see the digital as the young people see the digital. So one thing that research and this kind of project help to broaden this narrow view is to see how communication is important, how can be used these practices, how can they be improved even at the level of the class, and instead of in order to avoid that idea that digital is just it's just practical and it's just instrumental, and they ignore the digital culture and the digital needs and the digital lack of skills that this research presents. So I think, to finish, I think we have a great opportunity to produce accessible materials, to share and communicate and create content with teachers and with young people, as we have already done in some parts, but we can continue this because I believe that if we recognize the need of making this proximity between the academic world and the teachers, the educational world, we have to overlap these barriers that exist for decades.
Thank you so much, Cristina, for your reflections. And yeah, also trying to link what we've said so far. I think many times much of what we produce is focused on materials for teachers. I mean, we try to see like the educational stakeholders as basically teachers, but there are many other intermediaries, as Andy mentioned at the beginning, and now what you're also saying. So the materials can be accessible, we can have good evidence-based resources, we might even have the right outreaching strategy, but maybe we are focusing on the wrong target. I mean, maybe we also need to address other layers within the schools, for instance, headmasters, headmistresses. We're also the publishers of educational materials and things like that. And that relates to my next question, which is based on the findings from also research that we did together, all of us, plus some of our colleagues here. We interviewed experts from the labor market and interviewed experts from education, and ask them how can we, what is necessary to foster digital skills, I mean, to support young people to develop better digital skills. And it was a sad conclusion that in all the countries where we carried out this research, one of the aspects where everybody agreed was that the educational provision for an old in Europe is basically deficient. The schools were really not doing a great job at teaching media literacy, digital skills. So I would like to start now the next question with Veronika, because you haven't had the floor yet. And what do you think is actually currently missing? What are the gaps there? What can we do in terms of content, not just about dissemination? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, we have already talked about generative AI today and artificial intelligence and everything related to that. But let me bring a fresh example from that area. In this summer, we actually saw quite a massive usage of AI among Estonian candidates for universities. And they namely try to employ AI to write motivation letters for them. And I can say that in the case of one practical specialty, the share of young people who tried this was actually 10%. So they submitted the motivation letters written by AI. Of course, they failed miserably. And they lost an opportunity to enter their chosen specialties. And they were fresh graduates from secondary schools. So what this demonstrates is that they actually had quite good technological skills. They had learned this very new technology really fast, but they were lacking some other really crucial skills, such as, for instance, communication skills or critical thinking skills, and also they could not imagine their readers' expectations, skills and reception, and then the outcome of such communicative endeavor. And so I argue that we would actually need to pay much more attention to enhancing skills that are related to communication, creation, critical thinking, critical evaluation, to make our young people more future-proof, so to say, in a very good sense, to make them ready for any new and emerging technologies by providing those critical communication skills. And also, as Maria told today, digital skills are entwined with psychosocial life skills, and actually those two types of skills have to be taught together, not separately, and across different subjects in our curriculum.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Battery. No, it's okay. Yeah, would anybody else would like to comment on these questions? What is currently missing in the educational provision? I mean, how can we really make sure that schools do a good job at supporting the development of better digital skills? And what are we missing right now? Maybe you can refer to your country's experiences, or...
I will just give you this small example of my activity. For many years, we are designing, and we've got the impact program that is the program on actually cyberbullying or cyber violence prevention based on qualitative studies. So we made a qualitative study of young people involved into the situations of cyberbullying, and based on these results, we designed the program. And just to give you the example, that sometimes you do such programs without research, and you say, for example, to young people, okay, if you are a bystander, report when something is happening. But actually, when you go deeper into qualitative study, you know that it's not that easy in the social circumstances of this small group to just be so brave or so you have to take this into account. So, for example, we made the modules that directly target this. So we discussed with young people why is a problem, what else could you do than reporting, for example. So we really take into account the approach of young people. And sometimes if it's done in this way, that you really care about the details, because we sometimes do let's say, or prepare the education programs that are totally unrealistic. For example, I know the programs for information skills, they give the advice to young people, check everything you find on the internet if it's true. Is it realistic for anyone? No, it's for nobody, But it's an education program with this kind of advice, yes? So sometimes being really close to the real world with this education and with this, but this is more we need more effort to do this. Yes, it's easier to do the program that you make information program that you inform young people what is cyberbullying and they know, and from the next day they don't do it because they know what it is. Yes, and it's many programs of this kind, you know. But when you go deeper into details into the social context, the schools really feel that this is something different. So it's also the quality of what we offer. Sometimes it is the answer. So it's all about the quality of what we offer, actually.
Thank you so much, Jacek. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to our last question for the panel, so that then you can make comments or ask questions. My last question to you is about something a little bit different. I think we know that much of the work we do as researchers is dependent on many times on external funding. Now, what is the role of those funding bodies to stimulate the real cooperation? Because many times, I think in many projects, I think the boxes are ticked. We did dissemination, and then we're happy with that. But now, there's not enough funding, not enough resources, not enough time within the projects to do a real, proper work. So what is, according to you, the role of funding bodies in stimulating this cooperation? And do you think, I mean, it's also part of their role? Do they have responsibility here? And if so, what are your practical ideas? What should they do, apart from giving us more money, of course, to make the connections? Thank you. Veronika? Yeah?
Well, yes. More money is always good, but never enough. But well, I would actually argue that project-based research economy is not most helpful in fostering effective cooperation, because cooperation always needs time, but it also needs mutual trust and social capital ties. Therefore, researchers would need much more stable funding to build and maintain cooperation with educational stakeholders, for instance, schools. And I would argue that this can be achieved by either longer projects or programs even, or, for instance, establishing research centers that can reapply for funding, of course, based on evaluation. So that is what we need for more effective cooperation with our partners. Stability and a guarantee of continuing this work, either in the field of digital skills or any other educational area, because, well, otherwise researchers also cannot be sure whether they can continue this nice cooperation or whether they should study, for instance, elderly people or absolutely other groups the next year.
First of all, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah. But I just want to go a little further. It's because, on the one hand, that's totally correct. Then, if we look at the alternative, one of the big questions for me is how do you organize it and what is the governance? And I would think I wouldn't put researchers at the center of it. I wouldn't put them in the lead there. I would put organizations like Hans has with the European School Net, or even better than that, I would put those kind of organizations in the lead because they know what the field needs and they can be a very good intermediary together with the council and with whatever. But also, one of the problems there is that policy is very how do you call it? In silos. Right? And so, as a knowledge center in Flanders, trying to stimulate the field. If we look at the European level, we work with the InSafe network, with European SchoolNet as itself, with EDMO, with all digital, with digital skills and jobs. With the new AI Act, there might be a provision on AI education in it, so we should be working with that as well, with all the codes of conduct that will be in the DSA, and with the AVMD, also with the regulators. So all these silos have different intermediary organizations that all are kind of thinking of what are the digital skills that are needed in our small part of the world, but then what we need is the complete view. So at the governance level, there's a lot to be done there.
Thank you so much. Cristina, yeah, the last comment? Yes, thank you.
So I had this opportunity. In 2010, led by Sonia, we carried a survey that involved 25 countries, the UKIDS online survey, that produced results that have changed the view about what was the risk and what was the opportunities. It was recognized, it was in the main domain, this kind of contributions, and so far we don't have money to have these conditions to conduct similar surveys. The digital world is quite different from 2010. In 2008, in the second wave, each country has to fund money, and it's very hard to find money for this kind of, and the countries are very unequal. And we want to do, again, a European survey, because in 2014, 2024, the situation is quite different, and it would be, I make this appeal, it would be a great opportunity if the European Commission considers that this kind of research that provides evidence, that provides evidence for policymakers, reorganize their ideas about what are the concerns and what are the things that should be considered, became a reality, because put all the effort over the researchers that do lots of things and have to knock the door asking for money is really hard. And I think that this kind of projects has already proved that they had an impact, a political impact, a social impact that should be recognized.
Thank you, Cristina. I'm really sorry. We are already over time, but I'm not sure if there is time or really interest for someone from the audience for last question or not. It's not my fault. Sorry for asking the last question. No, so no questions? So yeah, thank you so much, and we can continue later the conversation. Thank you.